Soul 3, a realistic epic fantasy adventure for adults, by Wdowski. Note: for your full enjoyment, be sure to read or listen to the end for the conclusion. Chapter 48, Eastern Hill on the King's Road. As her legions reached the 300-yard markers, the East Riverton gun crews switched to grape shot, hurling clusters of iron balls slightly smaller than golf balls at 800 miles per hour, turning the cannons into large shotguns. The spread would wipe out entire sections of the front lines of the demon formations. Their formations stepped over the dead and wounded and continued forward as if they were marching against a strong headwind. Rounds of grape shot cut down large sections of their front ranks 8 more times, until her legions reached the stakes marking 200 yards. With only 3 guns, the horde was losing 30 warriors per volley. Even though their sheer numbers healed their lines quickly, the impact of the guns on their comrades psychologically devastated the surrounding demonoids. In spite the fear that was beginning to grip them, they pushed forward their advance. At 200 yards, the gun crews switched to canister shot that fired 200 musket balls at once. The 3 guns firing canisters took down 20 red demonoids each per shot. Also, at 200 yards, the long bowman behind the shield wall of spearmen let loose a cloud of 2,000 deadly arrows. The arrows and canister shot caused the demonoid advance to hesitate for the first time, long enough for the guns and archers to unload another wave of destruction into their front lines. Their Imperator Legion leaders, using tormentors, pushed their legions. The massive force pressed forward. Again, more canisters and arrows blasted against their front lines. This time, it did not cause the horde to pause. They continued due to those behind them pushing them to bring the fight to the humans. At 100 yards, the muskets on both flanks opened fire. Like the canister rounds, the musket balls easily tore through the plated armor of the demonoids. 50 red devils fell with each volley from both flanks of musket fire. The second row of standing musketeers fired at the target-rich horde, as their first row of kneeling musketeers quickly reloaded as they had practiced over and over again on East Riverton's village green. Mechanically, they kept up a steady rate of fire into the demonoids. Their vast numbers, and the tormentors pushing them from behind, kept the Red Legions steadily filling their ranks and advancing on the humans. Greendale got on the walkie-talkie. "Now would be a good time. They are almost on top of us. Northern tree line." Hearing Greendale over the handheld wireless, Dale turned to his dismounted men armed with the Warson rifles and loaded with extra magazines. "It's our turn." Dale, Zup, and his riflemen all stepped forward out of the tree line. Spotting the humans emerging from the cover of the northern New England woods, the 3 legions in front of Lucifera, en masse began marching towards the very small group of men. 10 paces out, Dale ordered the 20 men to kneel and take aimed shots at Lucifera hovering above the legions. At over a half-mile away, only a couple of shots hit her. She responded by commanding the 4 giants to step in front of her. Shielding their mistress, the 5.56mm rounds were mere annoyances to the giants. Dale, realizing they could not reach her, directed his men to open fire upon the front lines of the 3 demonoid legions marching upon them. 21 demonoids fell immediately, even though they were 700 yards out. Stepping over the dead and wounded, the 3 legions continued to advance. The giants too moved closer, following the legions, with Lucifera protected behind them. Dale told his men to focus on the demonoid front ranks. Every half-second, another 21 warriors fell to their knees, black blood oozing from their wounds. Their protective armor was useless against the human firearms. They had dropped hundreds of demon red devils within minutes, yet still in the thousands they continued to close in to bring the fight to the small cluster of men firing relentlessly. Under their black banners, and to the sound of kettle drums beating, they loomed larger and larger as they closed in on Dale's small group of men. At about 500 yards, the drums slightly quickened their beat, signaling for the formations to pick up their pace. At 200 yards, the kettle drums quickened their tempo even more so, causing the warriors to advance even faster, almost to a run. Yet they were still not close enough to make a full-out charge. Sweat began to bead on several of the men's foreheads as the demonoid's fiery yellow and orange eyes began to be clearly made out. Runners returned from the supply wagon with more full magazines to replace the emptied ones the riflemen were burning through. The men quickly snapped in fresh full metal jackets into their weapons to keep up their rate of fire. The boys collected the empty magazines to be refilled back at the supply wagon, as other runners returned with more loaded magazines for the Warson assault rifles. At about 50 yards, the front ranks of the demonoids were so close that Dale could make out the saliva glistening on their angry fangs. As overwhelming their advance was, it was at that range that 1,500 arrows flew from the tree-lined canopy behind Dale and his men. Quadtron hunters, using 2 arms to hold on to the trees, used their freed arms to lose their arrows into the demonoid legions. The impact of Quadtron arrows and human assault rifles halted the Red Horde's advance. Dale turned behind them to the boys holding the emergency flood flashlights. Now! All 4 boys aimed the strong shafts of lights upon Pixa, who stood in the middle of them. Feeling the rush of energy from the lights, Pixa quickly rose above them. The boys kept their lights focused on Pixa from 4 points. Bathed in the artificial lights, she drew her wand from the vine belt around her low-cut green leaf dress. She aimed her wand at the 4 giants. They all stopped their advance as Pixa began to free them from Lucifera's hold on them. Lucifera, her eyes turned their fiery red as she cursed Pixa. She then focused on regaining her seductive powers over the giants. Feeling them falling back under Lucifera's control, Pixa increased her own charming powers over the 4 massive men. The 2 women battled over the giants. Lucifera began to lose control over the darkened heavens as she struggled to counter Pixa trying to free the giants. The black clouds above the battlefield began to allow some rays of sunlight through. The additional beams of sunlight strengthened Pixa's powers even more so, freeing the 4 giants completely. Filled with rage, the 4 giants turned on Lucifera. Each grabbed one of her limbs as she struggled to free herself from their holds. They pulled her apart, quartering her and causing her remains to burst into balls of fire. The darkened stormed clouds suddenly dissipated with her. The exposed sun shined down upon the demonoid forces caught in the open fields. The entire army halted and dropped their weapons to cover their eyes as best they could from the bright, natural sunlight. From the north, tradesmen's command of 2,000 spearmen rode out from the tree line, charging into the blinded red devils. From the east, the Anubis chariots with cutting blades upon their wheels rolled over the hillside past the cannon. Down the hill, the spearmen and archers stepped aside to let them pass. The gates of Tregor opened as their drawbridges were dropped. 500 light Neathton horsemen rode out to engage the enemy. As Zup had predicted, the disarmed blinded demonoids and tormentors were easily cut down like corn stalks ready for harvest. The human horsemen, the Anubis charioteers, and Neathton light cavalry gave no mercy. As some of the demonoids attempted to flee to the shade of the forest, Quadtron hunters from the treetops picked them off easily if any of them ran close enough to the tree lines. In the east, the human musketeers did the same. After the chariots had passed the human lines, Greendale ordered his 5,000 spearmen and 2,000 archers reclose their ranks and advance, preventing any of the demonic creatures from escaping the field. They gave no quarter, and without prejudice systematically dispatched in all haste any demons still holding on to life. Greendale picked up the walkie-talkie, looking to the northwest where Dale was. "Any casualties?" "None." Dale responded, "It's a miracle we didn't lose a single soul." "You?" They had reached our forward line of spearmen just before the heavens finally opened. We lost only a handful of men, a few dozen wounded, but we held them long enough for you to bring the day. Greendale spoke into the wireless. "It wasn't me." Dale looked up at Pixa that still hovered above him. "Perhaps Josh's prayers to the great author helped," suggested Greendale. Perhaps. He most definitely gave us an epic story to tell our great-grandchildren, Dale still looking up at Pixa, who smiled down upon him. A story of a little fairy princess that pushed back the hordes of Hades and saved all of us. I could not have done it without your human ingenuity, Pixa replied, settling down on the ground in front of Dale. Are you okay? He asked, noticing that even with the sunlight she seemed greatly weakened. Her smile broadened as she looked up at him. I am now. Yet she looked extremely fatigued. Her legs began to wobble as she at times closed her blue eyes. Concerned, Dale signed off the walkie-talkie with Greendale. He asked her again, Pixa, are you sure you are okay? At that, she collapsed before him, knocked out in one of her deep sleeps as the sun had already set. He rushed to her and gently picked her up. She was barely breathing, and her heart had never beaten so faintly before. No matter what he tried, he could not wake her. He carried her to the supply wagon, took off his vest, and placed it under her head. Pixa. He called to her gently. She did not answer. Please, Pixa. He began to choke up. Zup, Josh, and Methuselah all approached him at the wagon, having seen him carry her to it. They were all worried for Pixa. With fear clearly on his face, he turned to his friends. I don't know what is wrong. Josh, Methuselah, please, pray to the great author. Her story cannot end like this, after all she has done for all of us. The two Quadtron men looked up into the blue sky above. They each raised all four of their open palms towards the heavens, closing their eyes. Their lips moved silently as they prayed in silence to the great author. Dale and Zup bowed their heads and closed their eyes as they too began to pray for her. Please, do not take her. Dale spoke up to the supernatural force he did not believe was real, but at this time, desperately wanted there to be a great author. I know I don't have Josh's faith in you, but if you are there, if you are writing our story, if you do care for us, I beg you to please not end Pixa's life. He closed his eyes tightly, and with all his heart, he begged that the great author was real and a force for good. Dale? He heard Pixa's voice behind him. He opened his eyes and turned to the back of the wagon. She was sitting up on the edge of the wagon, using his vest to cover her naked body. She had lost her wings, and she had grown more than 5 times her size. Pixa? Dale was stunned. It was her, but not her. It is me, Dale, she responded, broadening her smile. But how? Asked Zoop. The evil is gone. I can finally start my own court, create my fairy hive. But you lost your wings, Dale pointed out. I have no need of them, like an ant queen loses her wings once she is ready to start her own colony. Don't you need a fairy king? Zoop asked. I have chosen my king. She reached her human-sized right hand out to Dale as she used her left arm to keep his vest close to her. Will you, Dale? Will you be my king? The end. To support the author, please like, share, comment, and subscribe.